Welcome to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the comrades. Don't be afraid to stand up for what you really believe in. There's this idea that just because I believe that white people are not inherently evil or inherently racist, then it means I'm a sellout. There's a certain group of black people that hates and harasses fellow black people for being able to think for themselves. They want us to stand together as black people, even if we're standing in a puddle of sewage. Basically, they want us as black people to behave like a herd of cattle. If you dare step out of the herd, try to think in a different way to them, talk using facts instead of the script we've all been taught, look at things from a different viewpoint to them, they will label and insult you. What gives you the right to label and insult me simply because I don't subscribe to the herd mentality that the others have chosen to adopt? We are labeled coconuts. Basically, we are brown on the outside but white on the inside. Simply because I don't support the corruption, the incompetence, or the stupid ideas being presented by many of the black politicians, that makes me a coconut. Okay, they'll call you a sellout when you choose to support, stand for, or defend a white person, or even when you speak for unity of the races. You're simply stating facts, and for that, you quickly become a house girl or houseboy. Some are called Uncle Tom. Why? Simply because they don't believe in being racist towards white people or any person. Just because you prefer to judge people based on their character and conduct instead of their race, you get a label. What they want is for you to simply stand up and defend black people in all cases, even when you know that that black person is destroying the country and the lives of many, including the lives of the ones insulting you. Well, that's the way things are. I'm not afraid of such racist and evil people. I'm not afraid of the liars and the insulters. They want us to use race in politics when race should be left out of politics, as we have learned from apartheid. Apartheid was used against black people and it benefited white people. White people lived in better conditions, better neighborhoods with better services. So all white people could have been selfish and said, hey, we are benefiting, so let the black people suffer. They could have said, let apartheid continue. In any case, these black people are not white like us, so why should we bother? Instead, among the white people were people who said apartheid should end. Many white South Africans supported the end of apartheid. Yes, the white government, along with some white civilians, supported apartheid, but not all white people supported it. Just like many African countries believed that apartheid was wrong, many Western and European countries believed that too. Both black people and white people wanted black South Africans to be given the same chances and the same treatment as white South Africans. Why am I a sellout for simply acknowledging and sharing this truth?
I've talked about the boycott of South African goods. We must persuade other local authorities to follow our action. We must also persuade other local authorities to follow the action of the County Council, which was the first council in this country to disinvest from South African.
In the late 1960s, in 1969, when the Springboks rugby team came to Britain, and I was asked to coordinate the Nottinghamshire response to a game being played in Leicester. But on the day itself, we decided we were going to cut the cable to the floodlights at the rugby ground. We got into the ground behind the try line and waited until the Springboks were there. And then we took out our banners at a pre-arranged time and started telling them things, and I told them in Afrikaans, "Fok af terug na Zuid-Afrika, jy bliksem racist.
Russians are white people. They supported equality, though their drive was mostly for the spread of communism, but still, they were not against black people in Jay. The American people supported the freedom of black people here. They supported equality for the sake of black people. Black and white Americans supported us.
The Canadian government was delighted with Nelson Mandela's release.
He's a little like the crumbling of the Berlin Wall.
But External Affairs Minister Joe Clark said Mandela's freedom still isn't enough to convince Canada to lift economic sanctions.
There are some things that would be clearly necessary, and they would be the removal from the statute books of laws that give effect to the apartheid system. That is the only system in the world that writes racial discrimination into the Constitution.
Prime Minister Mulroney sent a letter to Mandela. In it, he said Canada shares the commitment to the peaceful dismantling of apartheid and the creation of a non-racial democracy in South Africa. We stand ready, Mulroney continued, to assist whenever and however needed.
Canadian leaders and citizens also supported our freedom.
Release of Nelson Mandela.
In living rooms across the country this morning, South Africans and their supporters waited patiently, waited for their first glimpse of Nelson Mandela. They are members of the African National Congress, people who left South Africa or were forced to leave. Like Mandela, their work against apartheid landed several of them in jail. His release, they say, is proof the struggle is won.
The same thing applies for Britain.
Britain's anti-apartheid movement is among the most active in the world, and today it hosted a jubilant rally of thousands outside the South African embassy in London. The singing and dancing persisted even when Mandela's release was delayed for more than an hour. Then, when word finally came, they sang the ANC anthem.
Right here in South Africa, it was the same. Although the South African freedom fighters had the drive, the determination and die-hard attitude, the white government was better equipped and better trained to fight the war, which made it difficult for them to win over the apartheid defense forces. Hence, Nelson Mandela, ANC, Umkhonto weSizwe, IFP and other fighters got the support of white South Africans and the global community to help win the fight. Contrary to common beliefs, we as black people in South Africa did not just win our freedom and equality through the combat we went through. The collaborative efforts by the South African freedom fighters, South African white people who voted for the referendum, the global community who condemned the act of apartheid government, the international leaders who put sanctions on the apartheid government, that combined effort is what led to the end of apartheid.
Political journalist Henny Serfontein has passed away. Serfontein, fondly known as JHP, died in his sleep on Monday morning in Johannesburg. He was 83 years old. He was well known for his sharp political commentary during the apartheid era, denouncing the National Party and its racial segregation policies, as well as his Broederbond exposés in the 60s and 70s.
When they came with the Terrorist Act in 1963 and 1962, the detention without trial, and that laid the foundation. I mean, all these atrocities we hear over the last number of years, of all the detentions, people being killed, start in that period, part of the anti-communist, anti-terrorist so-called drive.
A patriot who resisted an unjust system. His weapon? Hard-hitting journalism exposing racist atrocities. Serfontein rejected apartheid and exposed its secret masters.
With all the tales we've been told, the hate we've been fed, I know as black people it is hard for us to believe, but that's the truth. There were white people who wanted to keep apartheid, yes, but there were white people who wanted to end apartheid. Some of those white people were assassinated by the white government.
White South Africans are flocking to the polls today in one of the country's most historic referendums, a referendum which will decide the future of South Africa. We have reports on the latest developments at some of the polling stations. Voting began briskly in Pretoria this morning. Queues formed at all the polling booths before voting began at 7 o'clock.
In 1992, a referendum asking white South African voters if they supported the end of apartheid and the establishment of a democratic government was carried out. More than 65% of white voters supported the end of apartheid and the beginning of democracy. How many of you, my black brothers and sisters, know about this referendum? How many of you know that there are white people who stood up for us all around the globe? Guess what? This problem of labeling others simply for their belief is not just applicable to black people. Even white people get labeled too. Some white people were labeled sellouts and other demeaning labels simply for supporting black people.
Our cameras recorded it in all its brutal intensity and sent the pictures around the world. They hated us.
You people, let's get out now very quickly, okay? Because you people are the fucking cause of this now. Yeah, all right. So get out. Okay.
The battleground.
I know some are still being labeled such terms by other white people even to this day. As we know, there are white people who will simply support a white person no matter what, even when what that white person is doing is wrong. The same thing that happens among black people happens among white people too. Supporting someone no matter what, even when we see that what they did or what they are doing is wrong, is not the way to go. We need to stop looking at the color of the person talking and listen to what the person is saying. Watch what the person is doing and not judge them based on their color. When the white government was practicing apartheid, it was agreed upon by 65% of white people that they were wrong. We have been failed by this government, and we need to start taking matters into our own hands. Share resources, information, and time with those on the other side. Let's reach out and mend the bridges that the ANC has burned. Please, let's stop the politics of hating people for what they believe and what they look like. I'm Katla. This is Citizen Concerned. Until next time, beware of the comrades.